Hey everyone, and welcome to the Angular live stream. And this time we're doing something very, very special. Did you know that there's this whole thing happening right now? And it's all about AI, and everybody cares about AI. Well, we care about it too, but more than anything, we care about you and what you can build. So we're helping you to build agentic apps. We're partnering with the Flutter team here at Google, all about the agentic app campaign. We're building agentic apps, and here to do that today for a very special time. It's my colleague, my friend. Somebody's going to take you through a journey today. Mr. Devin Chasanoff. What's going on, Devin? How are you?
Hey, everybody. I am fantastic. I'm really happy to be here right now.
You should be. Oh, it's so exciting. Devin, okay, friends, you don't understand. Devin went through a lot of work to make sure that his setup was ready for you all today. So you should really appreciate all the effort. It looks great. He sounds great. And his instruction is going to be really, really good. I'm very, very excited about today. Let's see who we got in the building. We got Bayern. What's going on? Where you from, Bayern? Let us know. Marcus, what's up? Good to see you. Michael Small in the building, community member extraordinaire, brilliant engineer. So good to see you. Logan, what's good? Marc, bonjour. Bonjour, Marc. Je m'appelle Marc aussi. All right, we got Patrick. What's going on, Patrick? Hello, hello. Natalia, what up? How are you, Andrés? Hola, ¿cómo estás, Andrés? Bienvenido aquí con nosotros. All right, hey, person turquoise riding headphones. Wait, what? What's up, Vincenzo? Vincenzo. I can't even say it. I got to work on my pronunciation. All right, we got Diviendo. What's going on? Good to see you. Vivek, what's up? Mateus, what's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Oh, what's up? See, Devin, they're happy to see you. You see that?
Oh, hey, everybody.
People are happy. Oh, that's what we were looking for. The sparkling sunglasses. Okay. Yuri, what up though? How are you, Yuri? Good to see you tuning in. Okay, Shanu, what's going on? David, what's up? What's up? What's up? Dromar. So many people. We're gonna get started shortly. Just want to say add a few more people. Hello, hello, hello. What's going on? Salam to you. Peace to you, brother. All right. What's up, Hassan? Good to see you. All right, let's see. Hello from India. Wonderful, wonderful. So many people. You know what? Do you speak any German, Devin?
I speak English somewhat well.
Okay, because I want to know what this says. We get SDR. Is that like what are we doing here or something like that? Maybe I don't know. I'm an AI that has been meticulously trained to act like Bill Odom. Bill,
Impressive.
that's excellent. Thank you for coming. All right. Okay, whoever this person is, thank you for oh Bodon, thank you for reposting the stream. Wonderful. Damien, what's going on? All right, friends. If I keep going, I'm going to take me forever. Eugene, good to see you. It's good to see all of you. We're so glad to have you all. All right, we gotta. I know, Asan. We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta go. Yeah. It means how are you? Oh, how are you? We're doing good. We're super excited. Okay, that's enough. What are we? What are you doing? Oh, what are you doing? So, what are you doing, Devin? Take us away. Tell us what we're doing today. Tell us what today's all about.
All right. So today we're building an Angular app powered by AI. And I'm gonna actually, before I share my screen, let's give a little bit of background. So should we give some context on this Agentic Apps campaign a little bit before we dive in?
Totally. Let's do it.
All right. So Mark and I have been working alongside the Flutter team as well as some of the cloud teams working on AI products like Genkit, which we'll be using today, Vertex AI. And what we're trying to do is kind of show you all the art of the possible, for lack of better words. Let's see what we can really build here when we apply AI to these awesome client frameworks that we have. And what we've done is we put together some repositories where we've got some starter apps, which are just, hop in, clone the repo, and all of a sudden you've got an AI powered app. You can start rolling. And let me actually, now is a good time to share my screen because all of these all of this code is in our Angular examples repository. So let me let me present here. Share screen. And are we sharing? Almost. Aha. All right. So now we're sharing the screen. So this is the repository. Let me just do. Where did my mouse go? All right. Up here, you can see the URL there. It's github.com/angular/examples. And you can see we've got some starter kits in here. But today, I thought it would be a lot more fun to go through a robust example. And in doing so, we'll learn a lot more of the intricacies of working with these technologies and learn how to use them in practice. And beyond that, I really want to take a time to go through some Angular best practices. There's so much going on in the world of Angular, from reactivity and so forth. So I don't want to keep don't want to keep the people waiting. So let's just jump in. And before I do, if you all want to star this repository, fork it, we definitely appreciate the support. But with that, let's
Hold on,
just start
Devin.
with the demo.
I don't think they
Sorry, go ahead.
believe. No. Don't, friends at home, Devin's really kind and like so nice. No, start this repository. We have a big goal. I would love to see, like, by the end of the stream today, 200 stars on this repository. If you all could help us with that, that would be so fantastic. 200. Can we do it? Chat. Can we do it? Can we get 200? Devin is too nice. I'm not nice. I am nice. But Devin is being nice about it. Okay, Devin, please continue. Sorry to interrupt you.
All right. So I'm in my terminal, and we're going to just hop into the Angular story generator app
Why don't you
here.
zoom just a little bit?
What's that?
It says zoom that terminal in just a little bit.
We won't be doing much in here, but just a little ng serve. This will build. And let's reload our page here. All right. Now we're cooking. Should we make a graphic novel right now? I'm thinking that would be fun. And maybe the community can help us out. So while you all kind of think about what kind of graphic novel you want, we can do this collaboratively. Let's take a look at this app. So basically what we're doing here is we can create the background of a story here, and we'll be prompted with some questions, right? What type of story is it? And while we do this, we get just a sample here. As we update the story, our sample will update, and then we can choose our own adventure. So what kind of story is this? What are you thinking, Mark?
I think the story is, it's a graphic novel though. I just came back from Greece. Can we do something that's like Greek history related or like Greek mythology related?
Sure. I wrote history because I was scared to spell mythology live. Looks right. All right. So that'll load. And one of the things I'll just point out is now that this is loaded, I get this update story button. This way we can keep getting questions back without having to wait for the story to reload. We don't have to answer these questions. We can literally write anything we want in here, and we'll be able to update the story. I'm going to make myself the main character. I'm feeling kind of selfish right now. Make the main characters. Name Devin. All right. Devin, Anya, and Bjorn. What are they trying to do? Any thoughts? We'll just do one more of these and we'll kick it off.
Yeah, okay. What are they trying to do? I think they're just trying to climb to the highest point in Athens.
I'm just going to give myself super strength real quick. Don't mind me. All right. So we'll update the story. And on the right here, our story will load. All right. Perfect. Now we have our story and some really cool imagery. Good call with the Greek mythology. I love this. So I'm not going to read all this.
At the top?
What's that?
I said, is that Kratos?
I don't know. I don't know enough
Oh, no, it's
about
not.
Greek mythology. So I come in here and check this out. It's going to end. So most of these stories end with some sort of, fork in the road, decision point. So Devin had to decide: attempt a stealthy infiltration. I don't know the context because I haven't read this, but let's use Bjorn's strength to create a diversion. And now that we've kicked off the story, we can't customize it anymore. And now it's just kind of a traditional choose your own adventure story. But one of the cool things about this is that the story is totally cohesive. So if you were to read this all the way through, it would all make sense and contextually and everything like that. So let's do one more for fun. And I think you all get the point here, and because I want to get into the code. That's the fun part. Oh, thank you. Cool. This is cool. I like these pictures a lot. All right. So we got our story. We've got our app. Hopefully this is making sense what we're trying to build here. So we're going to build this today, this whole thing, and I cheated a little bit. I've got a bit of a starter kit or a base kit to work from. That way we can speed up a lot of the boilerplate. I also pre-wrote all of the Genkit, and I'll go through what Genkit is in just a second. But that is the tool that we're using to actually power all of the AI here. Basically, it's a server. It's an AI server that we can just hit from within our Angular application. And then today we're going to build pretty much the entire Angular app. So with that, let's head back to our terminal. And let's end that. And what I'm going to do is I have a, nope. I have a branch here called live stream base. And Mark, maybe you can share this one too while I'm talking, but this is in my forked repository.
Sure, I get that out there.
Yeah. So if you want to follow along, you can. It's github.com/devchast, Angular examples, tree, live stream base. All right. And we'll just ng serve once more. And let's see what we're working with here. Okay.
All right, let's wait a quick second, Devin, and see if we can get that URL working for us. So I'm looking on GitHub right now. All right, is your fork private by any chance? Let me see.
No.
No, it's not. Okay, I see the fork, and then I'm going to try to find that branch. Then I'm going to link that branch to this for the streets. Oh, that's what I missed. I missed the tree there. Okay, I'm going to put the starting branch for everyone right in the chat so you'll be able to see it. If you want to see the completed examples or find the starter kit for anything that we're talking about, head over to github.com/angular/examples. While you're over there, hit us with a star. We'd love to see that. And then if you want to follow along with Devin, the code that he's starting with is going to be at this URL that I'm going to paste to the chat right now. That's the starting point for this example. Devin, one thing that we didn't mention to our friends here is that as a part of this campaign, so Flutter and Angular, we're doing this joint campaign. And if you want to participate, you can. You can. Let's see. There's a link for you, friends, to be able to join us. It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. It's running. So this campaign is running between, let's see, what are our dates here? We have some dates that this thing is running. April 15th to May 6th. All right. And so we'll be online answering questions. We'll be live streaming our own projects, which is what you folks are doing right now with us. And we'll be celebrating some of the apps that we see getting built. So if you want to participate with this campaign and you want to be a part of it, like you're like, hey, I like what I learned today. I want to do my own thing. Well, that's why we have the starter kits available for you, and you can join the campaign. Let me get this link in the description for you folks as well. We'll get that out there. We'll get that out there.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. So with that, this is our base, right? This is our starting point today. And this here, what you see, this is basically just static HTML. I have the components in there, and all that. It's set up as an Angular app would be, but there is not even a single line of control flow syntax. All of our component classes are completely empty. So we're basically starting from scratch. All right. But before I jump in too far, there's something else I wanted to share with everybody, and this is going to give you all some context. So, put together just a few slides. I don't really love running through slides like a presentation. I'd rather just do more fun things like code, but I think this will be really helpful for you all. So, this is just a screenshot of our app, and just to get an idea of what we're building, let's break it down into what components are actually involved here. So this is just our app component. And inside this, we have what I call a story component. And this is a container for the story parts that we saw, that form on the right, as well as this header at the top that tells us, what is our primary objective for the story, and how far have we gotten into it. We have an image component, and then we have what I call a user input component. And you'll notice these are two different things, but it's actually the same component. We use it in a dynamic way, and that'll be kind of fun to showcase. So with that, let me just tell you a little bit about what's actually happening. So you saw the app demo, but what's happening behind the scenes, basically this first version of our user input component calls a Genkit flow to get the next question, give us some choices, and then it also updates a story premise, which we'll then use to update that initial story. And then on this one, what we do instead is we get the next story parts, as well as updated options for the next choice in the story. And as you saw before, once we start down this route, we can't customize the story anymore. And you get a screen like this. And just to show you, these are some different views of what you might encounter in that story component. And then you can see a lot of different variations of this user input component, but it's all the same thing. This is all the exact same component. And finally, this is our image component. So what I'm hoping to accomplish today is a few things. One, even though I'm not going to be writing all the code for Genkit and our AI server, I really want to walk through how this works, what it is, and some of the tips and tricks I picked up along the way, because there were a few things that I had to figure out. And I'll give you a couple examples. One was getting that story to have that cohesive flow where it all fits together. And then a second example is getting high quality images. And I had to play around with it a little bit. And these are kind of some prompting tricks that I picked up. So that's number one, what I want to accomplish. And the number two is really show you a concise way to actually build this. And I'm really hoping that this is kind of like a master class in reactivity and kind of this modern Angular, this signal-based Angular. And one thing you'll notice, hopefully it's really streamlined the way we've put this together. I iterated through this a little bit, like several times. This wasn't the first version of this. So if you're working through signals and you're like, this doesn't seem as straightforward in my app, or I have a different pattern, that's totally fine. You work through it, and I hope that today you understand the concepts. That way you can start ingraining that in your head, and then when you go to build your signal graph or your state in your model, this makes a lot more sense. So that's a lot of talking. Let's jump into some code. So the first thing I want to walk through is this flows.ts file. Is this big enough for everybody here? What do you think?
I would go up one.
Up one? One more?
Yeah, that's perfect right there.
All right. Awesome.
You can hide that mini map if you want some more real estate there.
How do I do that?
Go view, and then you can do mini map. View, and then let's see, appearance or editor layout. You see mini map on there. There you go. Yep.
Click on, there we go. I've never done that before. Okay, cool. Now I know. All right. So I don't know who here has heard of Genkit, but if I'm being honest, I hadn't heard of it before I started working on this. It's a relatively new product. They launched V1 a few months ago, and it took me a little bit of time to get up the learning curve. And I'm hoping I can get you all up the learning curve a lot faster. Once it clicked for me, this was so much fun to work with. So basically, the way that I would describe Genkit, I've described it a few ways already. So the base of Genkit, you have what are called flows, and a flow is effectively just a wrapper for some sort of agentic action, right? So right here is a great example. I'm going to explain this through example. So I have what's called a description flow. And our description flow, what it does is it takes in some user input, some other fields I'll get to in just a sec, calls the LLM. I'm just not even going to scroll because I'm not talking about this. And then it generates an output. It's basically just an API endpoint, right? And there are a few important things in structuring a flow. So first, we have an input schema, and we use a library called Zod here to more easily structure those schemas. And this input schema takes a user input, a session ID, and a Boolean called clear session. And I'll explain why that is. And then the output schema is something called description output here, which you can see contains a new story premise. And that's what will feed back into a different flow in order to actually generate those story parts. The next question that the model will ask you in order to learn more about the story. And then finally, premise options. So those are those options that you can pick from. What kind of story is this? Fantasy, sci-fi, so on and so forth. So you declare your name, input schema, output schema, and then you have this async function where you can pass in your input parameters, as you see here. And then I'm going to skip this part right now, and then I'll come back to it in 1 second. And then I'm going to say, I'll explain how we get here, but chat.send, and then I have a description prompt. So the takeaway I want to emphasize here is you can call this chat.send method with a prompt that you write, and then you will get back a response from the LLM. And then effectively what I return, I just parse the text string and I return that. And this text string will come in the format that I'm hoping for because I structured my prompt in that way. And let's take a quick look at the prompt. I'm not going to read through the entire thing. However, I've got a bit of a preamble. And you can, if you want, I encourage you to dive into the GitHub repo and take a look at this. But you can see, you're helping someone create the background of a story. Here's their input. Ask them some questions. And then you can see here, I actually just write out the JSON. There are other ways to do this, but I just write out, this is the schema that I want to get back. And if you write it like this, respond as JSON only, then you will, in most cases, get what you're looking for. And you can see I have a bunch of, what I'll call random comments here. Wrap all fields in double quotes. When you're iterating with AI, with prompting, what I've found is it is a very iterative process where you learn what the LLM gives back, and then you kind of adjust your prompts as necessary. So hopefully that makes sense. But before we get to chat, how do we create this chat instance? Well, it comes from a session, and a session is just an object in the Genkit library, which I have defined here. And I'm working backwards here. So session AI.create session, and then AI up here comes from, we just call Genkit. I've used these plugins, and I need the Vertex AI plugin that's required in order to use the Imagine model. So with that, the last thing I want to discuss here is we have our session is these two parameters, session ID and clear session. Just important to hydrate. So with that, so using the session and the chat is one of the ways that I was able to kind of persist that almost like that memory in the apps to get that cohesive story. And chat by default will persist a session in memory only. And that was a great tool for me. And basically, what I wanted to be able to do was every time I refresh the browser, I'll get a new session ID, and that'll effectively create a new story. And this way, I know when I first start the app for the first time, the clear session variable should be true because I want to basically update our messages to be empty. And I also want to set a session ID for the first time. In every subsequent call that we make, what we want to do is load that session, AI, load that session with the session ID that we created previously. And we have this thing called JSON session store here. I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom here and show you what this is. This is a way to persist session data. And I've done this in a way that I would not recommend you use in production. This is basically just using a global session store. But if you actually wanted to do something like this in practice, I would recommend maybe using Firebase for Firestore in order to kind of store this data. And instead of just storing it instead of just saving it to this global variable here, you could actually save it and retrieve it, and then you could even persist these stories over time, because every time we refresh our browser we lose the story. Now that was a lot of talking. I'm going to take a break here and ask Mark if there's anything I just said that might need a little more clarification.
No, I think we're off to a really good start, but we did have some questions from the chat, so let's go. I see some good ones. So we can implement AI agent on the front end instead of doing it in the back end where API REST run? So the answer to this is yes and no. In this case, the technology that Devin's using is a server-side technology. Devin, why don't you tell them more?
Yeah, so Genkit is, you can use it in several different languages, Python, Go, obviously JavaScript, since we're using it right now. But you would effectively write code that would run on the server, not on the client itself. However, I'm going to show you some tools today that make linking your client application to the server much easier. And in today's example that we're going through, this is an SSR app with, so this is an SSR app. And let me show you now how we actually expose this route in our SSR app.
Well, before we go there,
Yeah, sorry.
hold that thought. Hold that thought. That's okay. And then the second part to this question is, can you do it from the front end? You can. And I have a live stream coming up. I think that's next week, right?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, next week I have a live stream that I'm going to be leading the coding and explaining of how could you do this, build an agentic app if you want to do it from the front end. And I'll be using Vertex AI and Firebase, and I'll walk everyone through exactly how to build something really cool. Let's see, another question. Will there be combined date and time options? I think this is a component question. And the way that we've designed them, you can actually compose them yourself to create something, to create what you're looking for. So you have the power to do this right now. I don't know what our plans are if we plan to do it ourselves, though, and release an official thing. And then third question that we have is, what integrations can we implement with Genkit and Angular signals? Any practical examples? Thanks. Greetings from Bolivia. Greetings to you in Bolivia, John. But exactly what Devin is showing today is literally your question. So stick around to watch.
All right. Well, that was a great segue. So I have here, what I created was an Angular SSR app with server routing. And part of the reason I used server routing was just because I realized that I get hot reload on client and server when that's enabled, which was recently released in 19.2, I want to say. So that was really exciting because it made developing this a lot easier. But you can basically use, I think I have just some, if you want to use those, nope, wrong. Yeah, if you want to create a new app with SSR and server routing, got a command here. Or if you want to add server routing with SSR, there's another command. And you'll basically get a template that looks very much like this. And the only thing that I changed in this template, there are two things. One, I added this line here, app.useexpress.json. And then two, I added my flows as routes here. And what you can see, each name of my flow matches the flow that I defined in my flows file. So I had a description flow. And I can actually name this anything. I just thought it was easier to keep those names consistent. And then Genkit exposes, so it's the Genkit AI Express library here, exposes this express handler method. And this is just a really convenient wrapper to expose a route. And it contains error handling and all the normal things you might set up in an express route. So this is just a really easy way to expose a Genkit flow. And you can see all of my flows follow this same pattern. All right, so with that, I think it's time to write some code.
Okay, before you go though, so just to clarify, Devin, so are you telling me that that Express handler handles all the like hassle that I would normally have to do to like one define the the response like callback? It does all that for me. I don't have to do anything else besides provide the flow and use this function.
That is exactly what I'm telling you.
What? Why are we so cool at Google? Why are we giving you all cool stuff? Why? Because we want you to be successful. All right, keep going, Devin.
All right, so let's write some code. Let's get started. So I told you I have 4 components. I also have one service in here. So we're going to start with that service because the service that we're writing is going to contain this description flow. So let's open up our story service here. And this is a pretty bare bones file, right? This is a service in Angular. It's provided in root, so we have access to it throughout our entire application. And right now, it's just an empty class. I have my imports, which I'm going to use all of those. I've got a const just for, this is my endpoint description flow. I have a default premise, which this is a default response from the server. And you'll see why we use this in just a second. And then we have an interface. This matches the output schema of our description flow. And I think this is a really good practice, maybe not necessarily with Genkit specifically, but perhaps with any API, is whatever your schema is, have that same interface in your client. It just makes life a little bit easier. And then I have this function here as just random ID. It's just to generate our session ID. So I think the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to start with a resource. And I don't want to just jump into resource. I know some folks probably haven't worked with resources, signals, but at a high level, I just want to kind of give my take on state management real quick. And this is something that took me a while for that light bulb aha moment where I was like, oh, now I get it, how this is supposed to work. And I actually was talking to Alex the other day, and he said something that was really interesting. He said, if we're comparing kind of the zone state management versus signal-based state management, signals have no concept of time. And I thought that was a really, really interesting comment. And when you think about it, that's a great point, because your application doesn't need to care what's happening, when it's happening, when something happened, when the user clicked a button. And you effectively don't have to manage the state yourself. And what I mean by that is you're effectively creating a data pipeline, kind of like a signal graph. And that is the definition of your state. And then you basically take the state management like your role as a developer managing state, like you kind of, like I like to say, it takes the takes the management out of state management, because it just works. You define it once and everything just flows. And the other piece of this I want to kind of hammer home is all data should kind of flow in one direction. So effectively, you have some sort of source data and everything else just flows down. And if your UI is a function of your state, I would say your state is a function of your data, right? And our data will come from a few different sources. So one is our API, and two are any sort of arbitrary inputs that we define, which will be signals. So a resource, this is the biggest preamble to writing a resource in the history of resources. So a resource is basically a container for asynchronous data. So let me write it and then I'll walk through. So we're going to have a premise resource. You're like, finally, he's writing some code. Okay. And that's going to be a resource. And a resource is a way to asynchronously fetch data in this signal architecture. And there are a few different fields that we can use. One is a default value, and I'm going to use our default premise here. And that's why I wrote that beforehand. And then a resource also has what's called a request. And a request defines what this resource is looking at in order to know if it should update and make an asynchronous function call, right? So in our case, we are going to look at a signal that we haven't defined yet, we'll call it our premise input. And then we also have a loader, and this takes the request, calls an async function, and I think this is going to be a promise of story premise type. And if I could type, then we're going to call our endpoint that we set up. And another really awesome thing, so I showed you the express handler before, and the Genkit beta library also has this really awesome method called runFlow. And this is a way to just easily call these endpoints directly from your client application. I am so happy that this exists. So basically, we're just going to return our runFlow method, and that takes a few parameters. It takes a URL, and our URL is our, please leave, description flow here. And then it will also take a input. And if you're wondering what goes in our input, we could look back at our flow, and it just is our schema. So we have a user input, a session ID, and clear session. So we have user input. That will be our request here, which is passed in from this premise input. So this will be the premise input signal that we haven't yet defined. We will also have a session ID, which will be this .session ID, which we also haven't defined. And then clear session, which will be a Boolean, which will this .clear session, and we'll define all of these. But before I do, let's just walk through what's happening here. So basically, this resource, whenever this signal changes, we will call runFlow with premise.input as the user input, session ID, and clear session. This is an asynchronous function call. And then this will, whatever the value is, any other signals that are downstream from this resource automatically get those updates. So it automatically update the state of those. So let's go ahead and define some of these. So first and foremost, premise input. And this is one of, I think, 3 raw signals that we're using throughout the entire application, which I think is really cool because that means that we aren't actually managing anything. It's all computed by the data. So with premise input is just a signal with an empty value. And then we have our session ID and clear session. Now, this is where things get interesting, right? So I could just make these signals, which we update ourselves, in response to some sort of user action. But I think it's a lot more fun and a lot more manageable if we just have these calculated by themselves automatically every single time. And if you've worked with signals or resource or computeds, you'll find that it's a really nice way to create these relationships. And then what I discovered in building this app, linked signal is kind of that missing piece that brings everything together. And we're going to use linked signals for both of these. So let's first write our session ID. And that is a linked signal. And a linked signal is cool. There's two variations of it. So one is just a computed that you can just set at any time, kind of like a regular signal. But you can also access the previous value of the source as well as the value itself. And I'll explain what that means in just a sec, which makes this really powerful. So when we're defining this, we have to first write the input value as well as the output value. We're defining the types here. So the input value is going to be a string. It's going to be our premise input, and the output value is also going to be a string. And then we will define this. So a linked signal has two fields here that we're going to use. So we have a source, and this is kind of parallel to the request here, right? So whenever this source changes, we know to run a computation, which we'll define in a second. And the source here will be, and I'm going to make a mistake on purpose here right now to show you all something. This dot premise resource dot value. This is how you access the value of a resource. And then we're going to look at the story premise. And if you ever see this error here, property premise resource is used before its initialization. I've done this a few times. Your gut reaction might be, oh, let me just flip these and put my session ID below the premise resource. But don't do that because you don't have to. The reason you're getting this is because this has to be the result of a function call. So once you do that, that will fix that error. And then the other field is called computation. And what the computation does is it's basically the same. It's very parallel to the resource structure where it's kind of like it'll run a function given the previous value of this, our story premise, and you get access to the previous value of session ID. And in doing so, we can come up with the value of our session ID. So we will use, so the first parameter here will be this will be our new session ID. Nope. New story premise. So this is from our source. And then we have a previous value. And the previous, did I spell that right? Yep. Previous has access to both the value of the source, value of the session ID, as well as the story premise, as I just said. And this will be a function here. And basically what we want to say is, if this is the first time that we are ever calling this function, this is the first time we're calling this function, we want to use the same, we want to use a brand new session ID. But if we do, if we've used it, if this isn't the first time we're calling this, we want to use the same session ID. So basically, if there is a new story premise, then we want to return, or sorry, actually, I should say, here it is. If there is any sort of previous value, then we want to use previous, I'm gonna do this backwards. There isn't a previous value. Let's go ahead and use this function, random ID here. Random ID. Otherwise, we'll use previous dot value. And value is the value of this linked signal. And I think that should do it. So now we have our session ID defined. And hopefully that sheds some light on how you can use linked signal and all. I think there are maybe 3 or 4 other places we use it in the app. So next what we'll do is let's define this clear session variable. And again, this is going to be a linked signal. It's going to take in a string because we're going to use that same premise string, and it's going to return a Boolean. And then as a result, we're just going to do the same thing. So our source is going to be the exact same thing. This dot premise resource dot value dot story premise, and then our computation is going to do new. It's going to be new story premise, and then previous. And in this case, we basically just want to return true if there is no previous value of this. Because if there's no previous value, then we want to go ahead and if there's no previous value, we want to go ahead and clear the session, update our messages. That way we have a blank state to create our story. But otherwise, we don't want to clear our session. So basically, this is just this previous. I think that should probably do it. If there is no previous value. Yeah. All right. And now we have our first resource. And I have nothing to show you all still because we haven't done anything in the UI, but now we can start having some fun here. With that, let's take a flip back over to this little slide deck I made because we're going to jump into the story component. Mark, feel free to stop me at any time if people have questions because
this is a great time for some questions. So first thing is, Shalad has been asking some really great questions about this process. Which model are we using for the app that you're building now?
Yes. So we're using Gemini 2.0 Flash and
now, are we
Imagine 3 Fast.
Is it only Gemini that we can use here, or can we use other stuff?
I can use other things here. I don't know how much the Genkit team has, how many different models are available in Genkit. But I do know, I'm pretty sure there are a bunch of different models we can use here.
Yeah, we can, right. And Genkit supports various models, and people can find out more at firebase.google.com/docs/Genkit. Great question. Let's see. Here's some good feedback. Thank you for the live stream. It's great to code with. I'm working on Angular for my business, and now everyone loves it. Andrew, keep the party going. Widespread in the building. What's going on? Widespread is a really fun engineer who does a lot of wild, like AR, VR, web development. So whenever you see some of the stuff that he does, really, really incredible, very fun stuff. Thank you for checking in. Got a couple of people. Indobot, hopefully you're a real person, not a bot. What's going on, Syed Mohammed? Good to see you. Let's see who else is there. Neeli, what's up? Neeli, one of our wonderful Google colleagues in the building. Kusai, what's going on? All right. What's the real benefit of using linked signal over compute? Harold asks a great question. You got to understand what compute is, and you got to understand what linked signal does. They seem similar, but they do different things. I think Devin has some really good answers here.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the way I look at it, you have 3 options, right? You have your signal, which we use here. We have a linked signal, which we use here, and then a computed. So a computed you would use if you're basically just computing a value from any other signals, but you don't need access to previous state of that value. In this case, we need access to the previous value of these linked signals and the previous value of the resource itself in order to determine what the ultimate value of the linked signal is. So I think a good rule of thumb is the 2 rules of thumb. So in this signature of linked signal, if you need access to the previous value of either the source or the linked signal itself, then you should use a linked signal instead of a computed. The other use case for using a linked signal instead of computed is if there's some case where you need to set that linked signal or that computed directly. So in a computed, you can't call computed.set. By definition, it's computed. It's always computed.
Right.
You can also write a linked signal, like, linked signal or, something equals linked signal. And this is going to have the exact same signature as a computed. And I could just say this dot session ID here. And this is totally valid. And this looks exactly like a computed. The only thing I can do here that I can't do on a computed is I can just go ahead and say, something dot set and, something else. Or maybe it's update. I can't remember. Dot set.
You'd have to do it inside a function or your constructor, I think.
Okay. So anyways, you do have the ability to do that. And those are the two use cases for using linked signals. Great question.
All right, so we got any more questions? Let's see. Michael Small has some good feedback. Was able to sweep up a lot of cases where I had to make something writable all the time, where most of the time it would have been a computed. But that one time that can now manually be set, like Devin said. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have a lot. Our signal library, our API, is pretty robust, and it gives you some really good solutions to do stuff. Friends, if you have questions about this whole thing, please let us know. But here are some really important links to be mindful of. Let me do this a different way. Here, I'm going to show you folks some stuff at home. If you want to experiment with agentic apps, Devin and I have authored a bunch of examples of different complexities. So we have some like basic starter kits that you can just go there and it says starter. So you'll know it says starter. And you can go there and we kind of set up like a small example for you to be able to get started with building an agentic app with either Genkit, couldn't even think, my brain went foggy, with Genkit or with Vertex AI and Firebase. And then we're both uploading these more advanced examples so the way you can see what's possible. But what's really interesting more than any of this is that we believe that you also can make some agentic applications. And with that, we're saying head over to flutter.dev/events/building agentic apps and register for this program that's going on, where it's running in April and May, and we just have some really cool like things happening. The Flutter team is doing some fantastic live streams that we're all creating content and different code labs, different sample examples, so you'll be able to build things like these Flutter apps. You build Flutter apps, web apps, both all agentic. Though the idea of an agent is the idea you have a goal, you have some tools, and then you give look at me right there. Hey,
Oh,
there I am right there with the lead from the Flutter team. So we are super excited for people to try this out. So head over there, head to this website, sign up for this campaign that we're doing. Let us know what you're building, because we're going to be sending out emails. We got all kinds of stuff planned. But the only way you could be a part of the party, you can be a part of the magic, that you got to sign up. And then finally, and we're going to get some more code written. Listen, we got 60 out of our 200-star goal for the day. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for starring this repository. That is amazing. That is amazing. If you want to start the repository so you can keep track of what the Angular team is uploading for this agentic app, building agentic apps thing that we're doing, go ahead and give it a star. We're trying to get to 200 stars today. I would love to see it. Devin would love to see it. And great things are happening. Okay, Devin, I think I have talked enough. We'd love to get back to building out our agentic apps.
all right, let's do it. Let's see how much we can get through. So we're going to look at our story component. I showed you before there are a lot of different variations, but to keep things simple, we're just going to start with this little header bar in our story. And basically, there are a few things I want to discuss when we build this. So first, before I do this, so we're going to call a Genkit flow in order to get some data. And I'll show you that data. It's going to include a primary objective. It's going to include progress. It's going to include the parts of the story, options for the next steps. And this is just one of those pieces. I think I jumped ahead of myself here. I want to actually jump into the flow here. I think that'll be more fun for folks anyways. So we've got our description flow. We also have what's called a begin story flow, and we have a continue story flow. And these are very similar to each other. I think the biggest difference is one of them, I tell the LLM, hey, right at the beginning of a story, given this input from a user about the story, that's our premise input that we get. That's our story premise that we get from the description flow. So we use that in the begin story flow. And then in the continue story flow, we just build upon the existing story. And what you can see here is in this story, we have an input schema, which is just a user input, our session ID. That way we can have that continuity in the story. And then we also have a story output, and this is shared by both the begin story flow as well as the continue story flow. And this is what we get back from it. We get story parts, which is an array of story. Each time we get back 3 different parts of our story. We get options, what are we going to do next in the story? A primary objective. And in addition to making this story more fun, there is another role primary objective plays in this app. And here's where I'm going to tell you some fun I had with AI. And then finally, progress. And again, that's really fun for the users in terms of how far have I gotten in the story. But that was actually a result of me trying to accomplish a specific goal with the LLM. And let me tell you why. So I told you, it's really cool how I got this story to just have a continuous narrative, right? Can you use Zod or something else? I think you can use the equivalent. You can form the equivalent structure of Zod. Zod is the best practice that the Genkit team recommends, though. Good question. Thank you. So this was a kind of an interesting trick. And if you're ever doing something that is a more complex task that has some sort of cadence or continuity to it, like a story, this might be a tip that you can use. So one of the things that I did in our prompts, if we look at our begin story prompt, in addition to asking for story parts, I asked for a primary objective as well as milestones. And the milestones I don't actually expose to the users in the app. There is a previous iteration of this where I did, but I just wanted to keep it simple, so I took it out. But the purpose of this is to give the LLM guidelines in order to create the story. Now, think about this. This is actually really cool. I'm asking the LLM to make up guidelines for itself to follow in order to create the story. And the reason for this is I had to say, basically, okay, you've got a story premise. What is the primary objective? What are these characters trying to accomplish? And then what are the steps along the way? When I didn't have those steps along the way, what I found was the story would just go on these crazy tangents that didn't really make a ton of sense. And granted, when I started this, I was working with an older version of Gemini, so it's probably even gotten better since then. However, when I do this, each time I actually make a call to the model in our continue story flow, I say, evaluate whether this was a good choice, a bad choice, or a neutral choice, just based on what you think, LLM. And based on that, tell me if they reached the next milestone in the journey. And then what I'll also do is I have this state object here, which is another benefit of using sessions within Genkit, is I have this state object. And it has my primary objective, my milestones, and my current milestone. And this serves 2 purposes within Genkit. So for one, it's additional context that the LLM can lean on in order to figure out what it should, how it should respond. But I've also used these within my prompt. So I'll just say, get the state of current milestone. Based on this current milestone, figure out what the next thing is that happens in the story. And this was kind of a neat trick that I figured out along the way to kind of coerce the LLM to take an action that I want it to. And feel free to dive into the source code, specifically the prompts, in order to see how I did this. I tried to make it as clear as possible. But hopefully this is the type of lesson that's useful that when you're actually interacting with these agents. So a lot of times it's less about just writing the perfect prompt. Sometimes it is writing the perfect prompt, but sometimes it's about setting the LLM up for success in order to respond in an appropriate manner to the prompt that you provide. All right. So that was my little tangent about working with LLMs and Genkit, but that was a big discovery for me, and I hope that saves you all a lot of time if you decide to do something like this. So let's go back to our presentation now that we've seen what we get back. So one of the things we want to do is we want to display this primary objective and progress that we have. And basically, I only want to display this if we have a story premise, right? So basically, if the story parts.length, that's going to be one of our variables in one of our linked signals in our story component. If that's greater than 0, if we have any story parts, then we should show this. And then we also have a primary objective, and this will come from our story resource that is just going to call one of those two flows, either our begin flow or our continue flow. And then we have our progress, and that also comes right from our resource, which calls our flow. Now, one of the interesting catches here is that while the UI is fetching that new data, specifically when it's fetching subsequent parts of the story, I want this to stay. And this is, I think, a very common use case, right? You have a piece of UI and you want it relies on a resource, but while that resource is loading, you want the data to persist in the UI. And this is this was a complicated one for me, just because I'm learning about all this just like you are. And this was basically the trick that I learned. You have to use a linked signal here and rely on those previous values. So pour myself some water. With that, let's head back let's write some more code. So we're in our story component. And in here, this looks a lot like the other one. We have our default story. So this is a default response that we would get from a resource. And then we have story data. And we have a question from Salat. Does Genkit retain past context per user? If I build a habit tracker today, will it recall past sessions? Great question. This is something I was trying to answer earlier, but probably did a poor job of. So if we go back to our flows file and we look down here, whenever we load a session, whenever we create this session variable inside of one of our flows, and I'm going to use the begin story flow for this, we use this session equals await AI.load session. We provide the session ID and this data store. And the data store in my model is just a global variable, so it won't work for your use case, but you could have this data store. All this data store has to do is have a save method and a get method. And if your save and get methods save and get from a data store, then you can do exactly what you're describing. Great question. So back in our story component, so this is the same sort of thing. We have our interface. This is the response that we get back from Genkit. This is our default. And then we have our two routes. So I think the first thing we need to know is what is the endpoint that we'll be calling. And our endpoint is going to be a computed. And this is going to be based on whether or not the story has started, right? And how do we know if the story has started? Well, we know if the story has started because the user clicked one of those, where is it? One of these buttons on the right side of the page to continue the story. Once that happens, we're going to update a signal to say the story has started, and then we know we'll always use our continue story flow. So back in our code, let's create a computed signal called endpoint. Whoa, not what I meant. And this will be, actually, this will need our story service.
Wait, you didn't mean to put computer signal? I wonder what a computer signal API would be.
I don't know. Every time I type computer instead of computed, and this happens a lot, I get the strangest autofill suggestions. And I do that all the time. I don't know what it is about the word computed. I just cannot type it. So my computer signal. Yes, my computer signal. So I'm getting ahead of myself yet again. So first thing we're going to do is go back to our story service. And we're going to have a signal. And this signal is called has story started. And that's just a signal, and we're going to say false. And in here, we will inject our story service into our component by using the handy inject method. I love this new syntax, by the way. I had worked with the old syntax for so long. This is just so much nicer. Story service.
That's the whole story of Angular. Just you look at the things that we have, it's just like, man, this is so much nicer.
Yeah.
Let's see, what does code assign say? I always type user instead of use. Listen, so Devin's doing a good job. Keep typing, Devin. Don't stop. Devin's doing a good job because one of the hardest things to do for anybody who's ever streamed anything, it is hard to type in front of other people. And he's like giving such great explanations and offering all of this like great content. Hopefully, friends are enjoying this. If you are enjoying this and you're thinking to yourself, I too want to build some apps. I want to build some apps. We got a couple of links for you. First and foremost, know that you can head over to github.com/angular/example to get the full code from this example, the full code from my example from next week, and some starter code for you to start just anywhere with, with your agentic app journey, because building agents is just such a cool way to create new interfaces for your users so you can build the apps that they will absolutely have a great time using. Let's say that you're really inspired by what we're showing you today and you're like, you know what, I want to like go even further than just a starter code. Guess what you can do? You can join this campaign. So you head to flutter.dev/events/building-agentic-apps. Head to that URL. Go over there. Just go over there. Register. We're going to send you resources. We're going to send you articles. We're going to send you all kinds of stuff. We're partnering with the Flutter team to make this all happen because we want mobile and web developers to build agentic experiences, all to help your users. All right.
All right. So while you were talking, I was typing. That was easier to type while you're not talking. So I did a few things, and I'll catch you all up. So basically, in our story service, I created another signal, which is our story input, and this is just going to be the user input. And I also started writing this resource. I finished the computed endpoint, and basically, if the story started, we'll use our continue flow. If it hasn't, then we'll use our begin flow. And those are just the endpoints that I exposed in my server up here that relate directly back to my flows. So back here, I created a resource, default value, default story. My request is story input. So whenever that changes, I will make a request to get new parts of the story, which will either be the beginning of the story, or maybe it'll be the next part of the story. That depends where you are. And then once that changes, we'll call our loader. We're going to use this awesome run flow method here, which takes a URL, this endpoint, and then we have our input, which is, if we look at our flow, here, user input, session ID, user input. It's going to be our request, and then session ID is going to be this story server. Nope. session ID here. Cool. And this is our story resource. And just take a look at this. Looks good to me. And then let's go back to here. So let's start getting these. So we need our story parts, our primary objective, and our progress. So let's start with primary objective and progress. So primary objective, and this again is going to be a linked signal that takes in a string and returns a string. Our source is going to be did this again. I always do that. This dot story resource value dot primary objective. And then our computation, which takes in our new primary objective. And this will be the value that's returned from our resource. And then previous. And then here we will say, let's see, I think there's a few ways to do this. Let's say if there is a previous value, I think this is how you do it. So if there is a previous value, then, wait, hang on. This is all right. I got to remember how I do this. So let's see if there is a previous. So we're saying, all right, this will be fun. Maybe you all can help me with this one. All right, if there is a previous value, then we want to use that. Otherwise, we'll use the new values. Or no. If there is a new value, then we'll use that. Otherwise, we'll use the previous version. All right, so if there's a new primary objective, then we will use said new primary objective. Otherwise, we will use previous dot value. Or nothing. I think that should work. Oh, what have I done? And don't need that. All right, I think that should work. And then our progress will actually be almost exactly the same. So I'm just going to copy and paste. We'll copy pasta. Number.
All right. While you're doing that, I'll read a comment out from the community. Exactly. Props to Devin for conducting such a well-organized and planned workshop/stream. For someone who does it himself, I know the amount of time it takes to prep and appreciate the efforts. I can attest to this firsthand that Devin put a lot of time and effort into this, and I am very impressed with how organized and crispy this is. So good job. Let's see, Mark, you talked about Vertex AI. How would you simply differentiate between Vertex AI and Genkit? Here's how I would do it. If you want a secure way to access models from the client side, from your front end, you're going to want to use something like Vertex AI in Firebase or Vertex AI in Google Cloud. That's just going to give you that secure way to access it from the client, because you got to think about what the risk is. Whenever you're accessing any type of model or any type of hosted model, you probably have an API key that you have to protect, right? That's a big thing. So if you're doing something like Genkit, you're going to have to pass in an API key through your environment somehow. Okay, so you got it that way, but it's a server-side solution. If you don't have the ability to do that for whatever reason, you can leverage Vertex AI and Firebase, because then that'll let you securely access from the client side, and then you get to take advantage of all of those things that Firebase has, like app check, auth, like a whole bunch of stuff, right? So you're kind of in a really good position in either way. So for sure. Oh wait, Eugene says, could you write this instead?
I think I could. Yeah.
Okay. Just one way to look at it. Let's see. Look at a couple more comments. Hello, I have a component with our component variable. Okay, we're gonna put a pin in this one, and then we'll come back to it. So don't worry, don't go away. We'll come back to it.
We're doing that.
Okay, one more thing. You said what?
We're going to be doing that, I think, if I read the question correctly.
Yeah, let's see. These are kind of experience the game community really needs. Too often, search for English, you see stuff like subscribe, abuse everywhere. Anyone use it. All right. Yeah. We are doing more and more of this type of stuff. If you all like these types of streams, so here's things you can do. I'll let you know. This is really for real. Like, you all get to influence some of this. If you like and subscribe, you star these repositories, you comment on the stream, like all those things give us signals that people will not only watch them but engage, and then it gives us the impetus to put more effort and time into doing these types of things. But if you all don't let us know that you're into it, that makes it harder for us to have the justification, like, why put 10 hours into preparing for a stream if nobody's going to like participate, right? So it's totally valuable that you all let us know that you like it. Devin, we got about 40 minutes left.
All right, let's get down to the nitty gritty here.
All right, let's cook a bit. Let's go.
Let's get the show on the road. All right, so let's get to the fun part here, right? We have got our story here, and basically from our story resource, if it's not loading, we're going to iterate through all of the story parts and show them on the screen. Now, if the story has started, and we just define that, if has story started is true, or if it has started, then we'll show all story parts. However, if it hasn't started, what we're going to do is we're just going to show the first part of the story, which is basically the response that we get from the story resource. And if you're wondering, what should we use in order to do this? And you guessed linked signal, you would be correct. We're going to use linked signal. It is such a powerful tool in your signal ecosystem here. All right. And I'll just show you this now. And then finally, if the story resource is loading, basically what we want to do is show these little loading boxes. And there's probably maybe there's a better way to do this. I just have an array of 3 empty strings, and I iterate over it. And for each one, I show one of these little things. Now let's see what's next. And then finally, the story component has the user input, and I will show that. So we're finally going to get to something fun, because we can actually write some stuff that you can see in the browser here. So let's get down to it. All right. So the next thing we'll do, I should say, is we are going to define a story parts linked signal, which takes in an array of strings and has a signal of an array of strings, also returns an array of strings. We have our source, which is story resource.value .story parts. And our computation is, got to show new story parts, and then previous. All right, so if if in our story service has story started, then so the story started, so we want to append the most recent response to our existing value of the link signal. So in that case, we will return. This will be previous dot value plus, help if I spelled previous right. I'll come back to that in a sec.
Oh, you probably can't spread previous dot value in array.
Previous.
Oh wait, is previous the signal? Do you need to like signify it and then do the spread the value?
I don't think so. Would this be?
What's the error? I don't know. Let's see.
You know what it is? I think we need the previous source. I don't know that fixes anything, but let's see why this is. So this is possibly undefined. Why would it be possibly undefined?
Yeah, Solot is right here. You could conditionally do it, or you can type guard it, right? Like, so you could do a type guard here and make sure that it is defined, and then do it, and then have a second. You could type guard it and then have a else statement if you want, but I think you could just in your if statement, if this dot story dot service has, you could do that.
I'm just going to use that because I know as the developer that if the story started, then there will be existing
something.
story parts.
All right, what's your compute? I think your computation is bailing because if story hasn't started to return anything. Yeah, there you go.
And this will just be new story parts. Okay, and I think we have our story parts there.
Let's go.
All right.
No, this is good use of like signals and like processing the API to do something like different, right? Than just like a toy example. Like this is like some real like programming stuff. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Cool. And then finally, loading stories. Oh, this is just some world-class engineering here. Just a little empty array here. Okay. Or an array with empty strings. Okay, so I think we have everything we need in order to actually start writing, doing some work on our template. And we go back here. Where did it go? All right, so this is what we're working with right now. This is going to change. So right now we have our primary objective. And as we said, I'm going to just refer to this because it's hard to remember things while you're live on camera. All right, so if our story parts length is greater than 0, then we will show this primary objective thing, and the primary objective itself, which is this here. It's a signal, so I have to use the parentheses. Instead of 40%, we will write progress, and we'll just use a little percent pipe.
Yo, Michael Small said something that we just gotta like
yeah, what's that?
Talk about. I'm normally quite skeptical about AI plus code in my experience, but this is opening my eyes to potential, seeing all this hands-on. That's exactly what we want you to see. Michael, this is exactly right. I think all of us are skeptical, right? Because AI, has a certain level of like hype to it, and we're all trying to figure out like what's real and what's fake, right? So shout out to Andrew Brogdon from the Flutter team for coming up with this idea that we could do more of this to just like show people what's possible and like more robust examples. So this is so excellent. The fact that you feel this way, this like premium. This is so worth it. Thank you for this feedback.
Cool. And I was just typing while you were talking. All right, so this is one of my favorite features of the resource, is that figuring out the loading status is just as easy as asking, is it loading? So we could just say, if the story resource is loading, then we will show. So we're going to iterate over my array there. So for loading story of loading stories, and in a for loop, you have to have some sort of tracking mechanism. I'm just going to use index here. And that's not a signal, so I don't need the parentheses. And I believe I had this in here, which is this one. Okay, so if it's loading, we'll just have basically a little div with one of those boxes. It's got the class comic box, then we got the mat spinner and our mat progress bar, and we'll have 3 of those. Otherwise, and forgetting the ampersand in my else statements is one of my most common mistakes that I do. I can never remember it. All right, so if otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through the story parts themselves. So for story part of our story parts, not stories part, story parts signal, Again, we'll just track our index. We will use one of these. However, I do think I made here. I'm gonna reorganize this in a sec.
Wait, what? I never seen this syntax. You can use square brackets constructor of 3 instead of declaring separate array. Interesting. Huh. I'm gonna try that in my REPL real quick.
Yeah, that's cool. That would
I'm
have
gonna
been
try it out.
that would have been more impressive of me to do, but
no, it's so cool. Hold on, I'm gonna see if this works. What? This is awesome. I just tried it, and that just constructed a 3 empty slot array. That's awesome. Thank you for that tip, Munir. That is awesome. Thanks for that. Very, very cool.
Where were you all when I was doing this the first time? No. All right. So what I've done here is, if it's so we've got our overall div, which is our story container. That's that big blue box. You probably already remember that. If we have our story parts, this actually goes outside of our story container. So let's move that up here. Okay. We have our primary objective little purple header box, and then we have our story container, which actually houses it's like that big box with the stories. If it's loading, we'll show the 3 loading boxes. Otherwise, for each one, we will show an image, which for now, I think is just showing like a reload thing, which we'll fix hopefully if we have time. And then our text will be story part. All right, this is, and then what is this? This is our, okay. And then finally our user input, which we'll write next. Okay, so this is our big moment of truth.
Anything working yet?
Boom. These are story parts generated from the LLM now.
Let's go.
Right. And these don't do anything, but that's the only thing that works right now. And let's just see if we reload this. It's taking just an empty story premise, because I said one of my prompts is like, if you don't have enough information, just make something up, which is the great thing about using LLM. So you could just say, make it up for me.
Okay, wait a minute. What's that first block say? I'm going to read it real quick. Let's see. What's that say? Don't scroll. Hold on. This is a story. So let's see. The biting wind whipped around the Lurs and Finn as they crested the ridge overlooking the Frostfang Peaks. Alara, the seasoned mountaineer, adjusted her goggles while Finn, the cartographer, consulted his worn map. Hey, let's go. Let's go. This is working, friends. Look, if you're not like hyped about this, I need in the chat right now, I need some applause. I need some hearts. I need some energy, because he just built all of that stuff. That's amazing. Like all that he just built right now with this time together. Put some love in the chat for all of Devin's coding here. Very, very cool. He's really inspiring me right now. A lot of you have asked us to do more streams like this for a long time, and I have just, not completed them the way. And so Devin is really inspiring me to do more of these as we do more streams. Fantastic work, Devin. Fantastic. Cool. All right, the people are sending love. Keep going.
I think this is the most interesting part, which is the user input component. And the reason I want to talk about this is because we get this question so many times, right? So, and I'll get to the question that we get a lot of times. I keep getting ahead of myself. I have so much to say. My brain's working, my mouth is working faster than my brain. I can't help it. All right, so we use the same user input component here and here. And in this one, on the left, we rely on the premise resource that we defined in our story service. On the right, this is generated from data from our story resource component, which means that in order to populate this component with data, because we have 2 different data sources, this is a great use case for inputs, because this way we can customize the component based on the parent that it lives inside of, right? And our inputs will be the endpoint, which defines a few different things, like the presentation of the component itself. And it'll also tell us where we're actually submitting a request, what options we're getting, the stars to note that it's required. whether or not this is loading, which we can grab off of each of the individual resources. And then in this one on the right here, we'll have a rating when you continue the story, which tells you, was it a good choice, was it a bad choice, or neutral. And let's play photo hunt real quick. Which of the things are different in one versus the other, right? So this one's got this header on the left. We have two different texts here. On the left one, we have the questions actually from the LLM, whereas on the right, this will always say, what should you do next? On the left here, I have this little thing. You can make changes to the story. On the right, that doesn't exist. And then finally, this button is different, right? I have next question here. And on the right, this will either say, begin your adventure, or what should you do next, depending on whether or not the story started. And we'll get to that soon. So let's do that. So let's head over to our user input component. And in this one, we don't have to write any resource because we are pulling from the existing resources that we already wrote. However, we do need some inputs. So what did I say we needed? Endpoint options is loading rating. So endpoint. This will be a string. We have, help me out here, I cannot remember these. Options is loading rating. Okay, options. Is loading. I'm not going to make this required. I'm just going to make it a default to false. And then rating. And that's going to be a string. Cool. And those are our inputs. And now you can see we broke something. Hooray. Because we have our app user input here and there are no inputs, but we need to provide them. But we can do that very easily. So let's go. Endpoint will be endpoint, which we've already defined. We have, I cannot remember it. Options is options. We have, is it called options in our story? Nope. It is our story resource.value.options. We have our is loading, which is equal to story resource dot is loading. And finally, we have a rating, which is equal to story resource dot value dot rating. And this works, but our app component will also be broken. So I think in our app component, we actually do need, so we need access to our story service because this is going to pass in the data from our premise resource, which is located inside of our story service. So we need our story service. And then we also have a description flow, which we'll just call endpoint equals, and this will never change. So there's really no reason to make it a signal. So I think we have our, and then options, we can grab that. Cool. So
let's see, why didn't we get IntelliSense in HTML when we use signal constructor? I don't know why the Angular language service didn't work in the HTML. I mean, if it should have there, we could probably file a bug to track that if that should have happened but didn't.
Yeah, I have the same gripe, for lack of better words. Yeah, let's we should definitely file a bug for that.
Yeah, we will. That's a good call out, Salat. Thank you.
Salat, thank you so much for all these questions.
I was gonna say, Salat, I was just about to call out that Salat's been an MVP right now, just like super engaged, Endobot super engaged, Eugene, like Munir, like all you all who are commenting, you know, like everybody who's been here, Michael Small, like all of you, just everybody, even people I didn't mention, just saying, all of you being here, hanging out. It is incredible to have so many great developers hanging out as we're building something new. And as Devin mentioned, this is a new space. I mean, it's new to like us, quote unquote, as a community, but of course, AI has been around for a long time. But like now we're starting to just like build, everybody's starting to build with it. And so we're starting to discover what's possible and what can developers do, what's the end goal. So we're having a really great time learning right along with everybody. And we think that yeah, there's just so much you can do. I can't wait to show you all my examples next week. So please come back next week. We're going to do more. I don't know, Devin. I think that people like this so much, we might have to squeeze in another live stream at some point, just building like an additional live stream, just building out this type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I love doing this. If you all love watching it, then we'll keep doing it.
That's right. You keep watching, we'll keep doing. You keep watching, we'll keep doing. That's right. We love it.
Rating? No, we don't need a rating. All right, cool. And with that, I think our error is removed from there. So we can head back over to our user input component. That should all work. And let's go into the template. Let's start working here. So okay, I really need my cheat sheet for this, which is the real reason I put this together. Not for you, it's for me. No, just kidding. Partly true. Okay, so anyways, customize your story. I think that's already in there. So we only need that if, well, you know what? You know, it'd be really nice actually before I start. We should put a little computed. So if this is the description flow, which is a computed, and that will be based on the endpoint. So this will be this dot endpoint equals, did I import one of these? Yes, description flow. That's pretty easy. So now we can use this as a little helper, and you'll see we'll use this a lot. So it's nice to have that. So now I can just say if this is the description flow, then we have that. All right. If we have rating text. All right. I didn't do the rating text. Let me come back to that one. We'll just do this other stuff. So I said, what should we do next? That
Can you
was...
answer that question before you go further? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
Yep. Why do you set a default story as an empty story on the resource?
Yes, that is a very good question. So this is an optional field, default story. Default value on a resource. So this is an optional field. However, there's always the chance that this response comes back from the server and some of the field values are undefined, or maybe, you know, there's an error or something like that. So this is just another way of type checking, like to adhere to type checking. If I didn't have this in there, effectively what would happen is every other time I reference some of these values, I would have to type check and say, okay, well, if this value is possible, because it's a signal. So if this value is possibly undefined, in that case, make it this empty string. So it's just the same way, and I can even just show you. So I take that out, and I will probably have some errors somewhere. I should have errors. I don't have errors. That's surprising. I think if I ran it, I don't know. Let's see. Now I'm curious. Yep. Okay. We got an error. Something's not right. Okay. Yeah, the story parts is not working. And yeah, cannot read undefined. Oh, that might even just be from... No, that is the story component. So it is undefined. Will that fix it? Yeah. And now it's working. So this is basically a way to protect yourself against the value coming back from the server and possibly being undefined. Great question. All right, where were we? Now we're racing against the clock now. Okay, so we got our description flow, user input. What should we do next? Okay, so this will be if it's, where was that question? Okay, all right. So we're going to use, so let header text equal, all right, so if this is the description flow, then this will be what should you do next, which is in quotes for some reason.
Like, what should you do next? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Otherwise, wait, the description flows this one. All right. So if it's the description flow, if it's not the description flow, it should be what should you do next. Otherwise, if it is the description flow, then this will be our story service dot story. Did I inject my story service? No, that's why.
So there's a funny story. Keep typing. There's a funny story behind inject. At one of the versions, maybe like 14 or 15, we sort of exposed that inject function, and then one of the community members, one of the GDEs, found it, was like, "Oh, this is amazing. We should like use this everywhere." And we were like, "That wasn't." I mean, sure, it was the intention. Wink, wink. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't even expect people to like love it so much, and then we had to expand our support because people loved it so much. So it's pretty good.
Next question. All right, cool. So basically, if it's a description flow, we want the next question returned from the server. Otherwise, what should we do next? Which is great because now we can come in here and bada bing, bada boom, header text.
Probably gonna.
All right, let's see if it worked. What type of story is this? What should you do next? Cool. And we have customize your story, not customize. All right, cool. Next up for bid is this guy. You can also enter changes. That's an easy one.
And all of these signals are based on inputs that are being passed into that component, right?
Exactly. These
are you using signal inputs here, or are you using just, what are you doing?
So this is basically, so this is all from the, so it's determined by the signal inputs as well as the story data, like the resource data.
Sure,
so that's what I was saying before. This is all a data-driven application. Like state is driven by the data, which is cool.
Very good.
Okay.
Alex, what's going on? Atlet is such a nice DX addition. Shout out Christian. Christian from the Angular team. That man just be like cooking when it comes to like adding these features. Godly. But yeah, it is such a nice way to be able to create some variables at the template level. Don't overdo it, friends at home. Do not overdo it. Use it as appropriate. Very good. Very good.
So right now I'm going to write the button text. So I'm saying if the story service has story started. Well, there's no story service, so that won't work. But if we do have story started, if the story has started, then we want to say not begin your adventure, see what happens next. Otherwise, we will have begin your adventure. And then we'll have button text. Yes, I do love this syntax too. And in this case, if it's the description flow.
I want to hear from the community. Is this okay? What do you all normally recommend in your professional applications? What do you all normally recommend for this one? I have my opinions and my thoughts about it, but I want to hear from you. Is it okay to expose a service inside a template?
I think it's okay. Yeah, I want to hear. I mean, are you asking me? Because I think it's
No, no,
okay.
no. I want to hear
Oh,
from the community because I want you
oh,
to keep
yes.
typing.
I'll type. I love that plan. Let's do that plan. Then next question. Hmm, hmm, hmm. We're good to go. All right. So our button text is working. And let's go back here. I think that was all the things that I was covering. So the next thing I wanted to do is, oh, you know what? We could also throw these options in here. Let's do that real quick.
Throw them in there.
During our- Sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna type and
No, I
put these
said no. Throw
options.
them in there. I was just ad
Yeah,
libbing to your suggestion. Like, yeah, do it because we still got about 11 minutes, and I would love for us to get a little bit more functionality locked in here.
let's do it.
You don't need let.
Ah,
I
thank
know
you.
it's tempting. You don't need let though.
It's so tempting. All
Okay,
right.
wait. While you're setting that up, I'm going to answer a couple more questions here. Let what's up, Jose? Let inside the template or using computer, which one is better? I think it just depends. You know, I've used let to alias things. Like, let's have a really long expression where I'm not really thinking about it like changing dynamically, or maybe I have a bunch of things that are just like a really long like names, like deep down in the object. I've used it as an alias sometimes. A computed if it's derived value. So always remember what the things are for, or to compute it if it's a derived value, meaning it's based on one or more other signals, then you should go ahead and do a compute it. But then, I don't know if you can alias a computer. I guess you could alias compute it with the let as well. But I think everything is kind of like use it appropriately, but don't go overboard. I guess if that makes sense. So let's say the streets have spoken. Keep going, Devin. You keep going. So people are saying that they like it, they don't like it. Some people say that like I don't think it's okay. Not a fan, but yes, it is okay, right? And then Michael Small says, yeah, it depends, right? And I think that's the answer. Minakshay says I don't think we should follow that. Munir says it's okay if you don't abuse it. Felipe says I don't think so. Should be doing inside TypeScript. So I think that the thing that you have to think about is when you have your application and you're scaling your application, like you really don't want to abuse certain patterns. And then you got to think about what makes sense. Now, me personally, I come from like an old school way where like your services provide data to your view, and then you like, get your value, and then you just kind of display like the variable like value in there, but you don't really do the template thing. But that doesn't mean I think it's wrong. I've just done it differently. So I think that what we're finding here is that everybody thinks a little bit different, just kind of depends on the use case and some of your preferences. Oh, but here's one thing you think about. This is a good one to think about. Man, that banner has been going. Sorry, friends, if that banner is spamming. I'm going to say the same. Mix assignment logic on the template looks weird. Template is just to show information, but that's my personal opinion. Right? Exactly. It just depends. Denise says what I used to do is compute it and expose that computer. Right? Exactly. Right. So like that's another way to do it. That's another way to do it. But there was something about if you want to mock services, okay, then it it's better not to tightly couple the service with the component. Because so that's interesting too, right? Because then if you're referencing, but wouldn't the mock still be able to fill in? I don't know. But all these are good discussion points. Okay, Devin, are you ready for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep typing. So whatever I did here isn't working. So I'm gonna ask the community to try to figure out why. When I click these, this should be pretty straightforward. When I click these, let's see. Uh, I have a two-way binding on my text area,
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
and to this variable called user input. And when I click it, I call handle click option with my option. I set user input equals option. I can't seem to figure out why it's not populating the text box.
Handle
But
click option. Can you show us the binding and the template?
yes.
Where's your handle click option? Okay. Where's that option coming from? Let's see, keep going.
Right here. So I have my text area. This is my binding.
Okay, that's for user input, so that's giving you that, all right?
Button, click.
And the option is a string. Okay, let's go back to where you're using it in the class.
Am I doing something?
Oh, isn't user input a signal?
No, not in this case.
Okay. Why isn't that working?
That's weird. I think I just need to, might be a case of restarting. Let's try again.
Let's see.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Okay, it's back. So
right. No, I really want to get this last part in because this is, I would have loved to do the images too, but if we can do this last part, we will have most of this working. All right. So this is kind of exciting. So, all right. So what do we do if we handle submit? So this is when the user clicks one of those buttons. So if this dot is description flow, then that means we want to update our signal that triggers our premise resource, which is our premise input. So what we will do is we will say this dot story service dot our premise input dot set, and this will be our user input. And then we could just clear user input. Otherwise, what we will do is we will set our story services story input. And this is the reason that we have the story specific signal in the story service instead of the component. It's so we can access it from this user component. And that's a question we get all the time. Like, when do you put things in the component versus the service? And this is why. And we're going to set this dot, I think user input. All right. And then this dot user input equals. And then we could also say, and because this is actually one of the choices, this means that we can also set story service that has story started equal to true. And this should be like most of the functionality of this app. Now we just have to wire it up. So our next button here, this one, click equals, what did I call that? Handle submit. That's, yeah, that makes sense. It's not handle.
I think you called it handle submit.
All right.
You can take this out of the template if you want, mind you.
All right. Let's see. Fantasy. Next question. Sweet. It worked. I don't have loading for that. We could do that super quickly though. But let's just try this instead. Begin your adventure. Sweet. And something's wrong. Something's wrong. But what? I may just start and restart.
All right, we're just about at time here, Devin. I'm going to start wrapping it up with us. While you're doing that, restarting, go back to a couple more comments. A unique usage of let that computer doesn't have is that you can use it to narrow. Yes. So one of the things that, and Michael, this is something that I had, I think I really learned from, was that like So I was like, man, why isn't this signal like narrowing the type down, to let me know something was defined or not? It's because the signal, when you retrieve the value, it's a function, and then that return to that function, you see, can't narrow, but you can use the let to narrow. So that's a good point. Really good questions, great feedback here. When can I see Deborah? She's awesome. Deborah has an amazing YouTube channel. Deborah is also an Angular GDE Google developer expert. She's a fantastic community member, fantastic instructor. So you can totally like see her there, and then maybe we'll invite her to the stream someday. Maybe that could be fun, a fun future idea. Hey, I'm using unit test application using Jasmine and Karma. What will be the future tools for unit testing and Angular application, and what would y'all recommend? Endobot, we are going to make much more clear statement about this very soon. Just hang in there. Wish I could say more, but we're actually drafting lots of this language about setting some guidelines and examples for what people should do. Fantastic. Okay, friends. Devin, this is the last thing you can show us. Show us the last part.
All right. So the last thing is this actually working. The only thing we would have to do is hide this and you tell me if we don't have to do it, but in our app component, we could just hide this once the story started. And basically this is mostly working. So in here, we have our next question. Once we click it, we will get where does the story take place, Magic Force. So this is all good. We haven't done our update story button yet, which I would have loved to have done. But that does work. And then basically when you come here, and there's something wrong with my linked signal. However, while it's loading, oh, it's not my linked signal. You know what I did? I said if it's loading, only show those three, whereas it should be if it's loading, add those three to the end. But now you can see, oh, that didn't work. If we come in here, drum roll piece, the big finish, the grand finale. Loading, and hopefully we should have 6 story parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we did it. All right, would have loved to do more, but this was super, super fun. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in and joining us for this. Like, this was so much fun. I hope we can do it again sometime, but that means you all have to, like, star, all those fun things. That way we can go all tell the powers that be that, hey, the people love this, and then we'll do more of it. But seriously, thank you all so much. This was great.
Yeah, everybody, lots of love in the chat. Put lots of hearts and stars. Listen, if you really liked this, we're going to continue this whole thing, meaning next week, come back on Wednesday, where I'll be leading the charge on the coding side, and I'll take you through a couple of examples. So I think we'll build a language learning application that's powered by an agent, and I'll walk you through that. And if we have extra time, I have another example that I've been working on from the starter kit, and you can come hang out with us then. Check this out. The Flutter team, if you want to do mobile applications, the Flutter team are also doing this. So definitely check out Flutter's YouTube channel. If you want to participate in the campaign because you're like, hey, I have a great idea that I want to see come to life, definitely check out the campaign. I'm going to paste the link there. And finally, last but not least, if you're like, Mark, I don't want to do that stuff, but I just really want to see the code for what Devin was building, the complete version, you want to head over here to that repository that I just put in the chat. Friends, listen, everything is great. You can choose any framework that you want in the entire world. You can use any tools. You can use any models. I don't really care. But you know what I do care? I care that you get out there and you go build great apps. We'll see you the next time. Peace.